The Johnson Institute and E. Larson Enterprises present Relationships, Achieving the Rewards of Recovery, with your host, nationally known author and lecturer Ernie Larson. Remember, recovery means learning to love. And now, Ernie Larson.
The programs that we are talking about relative to recovery, why do a session on relationships? The obvious answer is, as we've been talking about all along, Stage 1 recovery has to do with breaking the primary addiction. Stage 2 recovery has to getting on with life and really learning to enjoy life, to get as much out of life as it's possible to get. And that always has to do with intimacy. That always, sooner or later, has to do with relationships. With your children, with your parents, with your higher power, with a lover, whatever it may be. How do you make relationships work? If we never understand that our program in recovery, sooner or later, has to deal with our ability to function in healthy, rewarding, loving relationships, then how far we're going to go in life is simply limited. Stage 2 recovery has to do with learning to love. So, let's talk about relationships. I want to start by asking a rather personal question, if you don't mind. How many of you have ever been in a failing or failed relationship? Has anybody ever been hurt in a relationship? I want to give you multiple choice of 4 reasons why or how that might have happened. See which one you'd vote for. Okay, now you have to be honest with these. Here's the first one. How many of you would vote that the relationship or ships that I was in that never worked out was because, primarily, they were a jerk? How many would vote for that one? If they weren't really such a turkey, the thing would have worked out fine. Lots of people vote for that but never quite raise their hand. Big reason. Here's the second reason. See how many would vote for this one? Bad luck. Nobody's fault, bad luck. I voted for that for about the first 10, 12 years. Then I began to realize I had bad luck in Chicago, I had bad luck in San Francisco, I had bad luck in Detroit. Everywhere I went I had bad luck. Finally my sponsor got me and said, I don't think it has anything to do with luck. You better start looking at your life, something having to do with you. Well, I never wanted to admit that until it hurt bad enough. Here's a third choice. See how many would vote for this one? God's will. It's not my fault. It's never there. God wanted it to happen. Predestined from all eternity to get in a relationship with this fourth alcoholic or this second dependent woman, whatever it may be. I had a friend in college who had a wonderful line. Said, if God had a forehead, it'd be flat, from going, I don't believe it. The stuff that we blame onto God is just incredible. Okay, now how many would vote for this fourth reason of why relationships fail? Given who I was and given who they were at the time, there's no other way it could have been any different. See, I think that is the one primarily that works. It has to do with me and with them and the qualities and the skills that we bring to relationships. Well, what is it that makes relationships work? What is it that makes relationships fail? And I think the key word is skills. If we don't have enough skills, as with any other kind of project, it doesn't work. Remember, there are a lot of people who love who can't make relationships work. You can go to almost any detox in the country and talk to people that have just gotten in there and God knows their life is a mess and they're hurting and they're bad. And you can say, do you love your wife and family or your husband and family or whoever it may be? Sure, they love them, but they can't make relationships work. What does it take to make that relationship work? We are going to talk about 5 words in this message. 5 words that I think pretty well sum up the key to the psychology of relationships. Again, understanding that relationships is at the heart of recovery. If you'll take a look at the sign here, what we are indicating here is that relationships are like tightropes. And a tightrope is not this pole and it's not this pole. The tightrope is what goes between. Now let's say that this pole is made out of iron buried in 10 feet of concrete. This pole is made out of cardboard buried in 4 inches of sand. How much weight can the rope hold? See, not much. Put any weight on that rope relative to in-laws, to kids, to sex, to money, to whether we ought to paint the house or not. And the rope absolutely caves in. This pole may say, hey, I'm working a program, I'm healthy, I'm strong enough to hold an elephant on this pole. But relationships are the riskiest investment you will ever make. Because as far as the relationship goes, you are totally dependent on the other person playing fair. Not as far as your personal growth goes, but as far as the relationship goes, you are totally dependent on the other person playing fair. What if they simply choose, by not working a real program, but what if they simply choose not to play fair? Then what can you do about it? What if you're married to, for example, married to a man who doesn't know a feeling from a crescent wrench? One guy told me, I don't know feelings from crescent wrenches. I'd love to share them. I don't know what a feeling is. Because I've worked most of my life not having feelings. I worked most of my life not even knowing what a feeling is. If you happen to be in a relationship with a man who doesn't know how to share feelings, and it is important to you as far as the relationship goes that you do share feelings and you do share your life, and they simply can't do it, then where does that leave you? Can you make someone want to share? Can you make someone play fair? Absolutely not. So as far as the relationship goes, you are totally dependent on the other person playing fair. Now, just before we get into the first of our 5 words, have any of you ever heard anyone else share with you, and maybe it's personal to you, a recovering alcoholic saying to you or to one of your friends, I'm sober, what else do you want? You ever heard that before? I went through treatment, I haven't had a drink for 8 months, what else do you want? You made me go through there, you pushed me in there, now I'm out, I'm clean. I don't go to those stupid meetings, but I'm not drinking. What else do you want? What is the response to that? See, the response is being sober is not recovery. If you could drink and be sane, go out and drink all you want. Fact is, you can't drink and not be crazy. So the fact just that you're sober doesn't mean that you're playing fair in a relationship. And it's important to understand that, because if you put so much emphasis and pressure on someone just to stop drinking, and not understanding that the problem was those self-defeating learned behaviors, that junkie driving the bus that has been there all along. It is very possible to be just as crazy sober as you ever were drinking. And both people have to be willing to play fair. First word of our 5 is both. The relationship cannot be healthier than both people, first of all, want the relationship to be. I'm going to ask you, if you choose to make this little diagram on your paper, put your name over this pole, put their name over this pole, and ask yourself, do both of us want the same kind of a relationship? Do both of us want a close, intimate, sharing, trusting, loving kind of relationship? How many of you, for example, have kids that are teenagers? Okay, most of us. Let's say that you want, with your teenage child, a trusting, loving, caring, sharing relationship. What if they don't? Then what? Can you have it with them if they don't want to? If their main agenda, which is typical teenage agenda, I'm out finding my own life. I'm interested in my own friends. I share the really important, the good stuff, my real happiness, my real sorrow with my friends. I just live with you. I sleep under your roof and eat your food once in a while, but here's where my life is with somebody else. If they simply, right here and now, are not at a place where they really want that same kind of a relationship with you, there's nothing you can do about it. There just isn't. If you are married to a non-recovering alcoholic, can you have a healthy relationship with them? What if you want it? What if you say, but I'm willing to work? What if you say, I went through 80,000 courses. Man, I know what communication is. Can you communicate with somebody if they don't want to communicate with you? Can't be done. Now, why is that so hard for a codependent to really own that first word, both? Because the codependent's motto is, I am responsible for whom? Everybody. For how many things? All things. How often? At all times. Say, if I only say the right thing, they'll communicate. Right? If I only change my body type, I'm sure they'll communicate with me. If only I don't say the wrong thing, of course they're going to communicate. Not true. It takes both. The relationship cannot be healthier than both people want it. Second word is willing. The relationship cannot be healthier than both people want the relationship to be, and secondly, are willing to work. How willing are you to do the kind of work that it takes to make the relationship healthy and whole? Are you willing to dialogue? Are you willing to go to meetings? Are you willing to have a sponsor? Are you willing to work a program? Because, as we all know, if nothing changes, nothing changes. If we aren't willing to do some new behavior, there are not new consequences. How willing are both people to work? And here's the third of both. Willing, or both people want it, willing, and the last word is able. Because, again, what we are talking about is skills, and if you don't have the skills, you simply aren't able. If I came into your office and said, I'd like that job running the computer, and I don't know nothing about computers, you say, fine, do you know how to program? No, but I want the job. Or are you willing to learn? No, but I want the job. Well, you can't do it, but you see, you don't understand. I want the job. They say, no, you don't understand. Can you do the job? I say, no, but you don't understand. I want the job. And you find that in counseling all the time. People come and say, well, I want a healthy, happy, loving, sharing relationship. Can you listen? Are you free enough of your fear of abandonment? Are you willing to really care? Can you share feelings? Are you willing to do the work? Well, no, but you don't understand. See, I want the relationship. It takes skills. The first word in establishing healthy relationships is both. The relationship cannot be healthier than both people want it to be, are willing to work, and are able to make it. Now, if we don't have skills but are willing to work, can we learn them? Absolutely. See, that's why this is really a message of hope. You can learn any skill. It's not a matter of what you're born with. A lot of people have grew up in the family where they say, but the Norwegian that loved his wife so much he almost told her. See, and there are a lot of us that come from those kind of families who say, I never heard anybody express love. My dad never told me he loved me. I never saw my folks ever express affection with each other ever. Maybe, but that doesn't change the fact that's what it takes. All of us have been affected by our past. None of us have to be victims of our past. Whether we are a victim of our past or not, meaning what we have learned in the past, is strictly a matter of how willing are we to work a program to pound out the dents. Second word in healthy relationships is trust. The only issue there ever is in a relationship is trust. Communication is trust in action. You cannot have a failure in communication until, first of all, there is a failure in trust. One or both begins to play a game. One or both pulls back into those self-defeating learned behaviors, and all trust stops. Now, when I talk about trust, most often people think of one of two things: sexual fidelity or not stealing my money. Trust means more than that. Trust means that I know it is safe to be with you. Trust means that I know in my heart, because it has happened, that you are for me. Not only will you not hurt me, there's a lot of people that won't hurt us that we don't necessarily trust, but do I know that you really are for me? That you are happy with my growth, that you care enough about me to say no, that you are really for me. Or in other words, I know you are my best cheerleader. Somebody told me that once. I thought it was just beautiful. That you are my best cheerleader. Why would you trust somebody that doesn't care? See, and we don't. When trust starts to dissipate, the relationship starts to die. Third word in the relationship, therefore, is trustworthy. The only way I know to build trust is to be trustworthy. Okay? Now, the first question in a relationship is not, can I trust you? The first real question in a relationship is, can you trust me? The first issue is both people being willing to bend back, to look at themselves and ask this question: what do I need to change to become a more trustworthy partner in this relationship? Not what do you need to change. What do I need to change to become a more trustworthy partner in this relationship? What is the risk in doing that? What is the risk in, first of all, bending back and looking at yourself? What do you think? What's the risk in that? Pardon? It could end. The real risk is, what if I'm willing to bend back and look at me, and they are not willing to bend back and look at themselves? Then what? You get creamed. The risk is, what if I'm willing to work my program and do my work and the other person isn't? Then you're out of luck. That's why it's the riskiest investment you'll ever make. Because as far as this relationship goes, you are really dependent on that other person playing fair. Now, being trustworthy. What do we have to change to be trustworthy? Where does a caretaker, or how does a caretaker not play fair in a relationship? Where is a caretaker not trustworthy? And the answer is, caretakers need the people they are in relationships with to what? Be babies. Pity the poor baby who starts to change if they're in a relationship with a non-recovering caretaker. Then the caretaker's main agenda is to sabotage that recovery. So caretakers don't play fair because they won't let the other person grow up. They won't allow them to take responsibility for their own life. That's why they don't play fair. So a caretaker in a relationship, as we talked about in the previous session, you have to start looking at yourself, working a program to stop being a caretaker. Where does a baby not play fair in a relationship? Why are they not trustworthy? Baby's main line is, I count, you don't, right? I don't have to, you do it for me. Where do babies not play fair? Why are they not trustworthy? Obviously, because they won't take responsibility for their own life, for their own happiness, for their own feelings. They just won't do it. Where do people pleasers not play fair in relationships? Why are they not trustworthy? Because they lie. You could be so mad smoke's coming out your ears, and the other person comes home and says, how's it going? Fine. Anything wrong? No. So mad I'm just going to kill you, but I'm not going to play fair about it. Had a couple not long ago come in the counseling office, and he was an efficiency expert, and his real complaint was that his wife would only make half the bed. And he wasn't so upset that she would not make his half the bed. She didn't care particularly about that. But what he was upset about was it was so inefficient to only make half the bed. Well, see, she knew how to get him. He also hated eggplant, and she was cooking it for him 3 times a week. And she'd never say, I'm getting even. What she said was, it's on sale, have a new recipe, it's good for you. Finally, what we found out was that he forgot her birthday 6 months before. And she never said it hurt my feelings. She never said I'm mad at you. What she did is make half the bed and cook eggplant. Beware of people pleasers. They don't play fair in relationships. Beware of people that smile too much. They lie. They aren't telling you the truth. People pleasers are like that. The only way you build trust is to be trustworthy. Why are workaholics? Why are they not trustworthy in a relationship? What is the message they always give to you? You count, just not as much as. You don't count as much as my feelings. You don't count as much as us. That's where your workaholics, they aren't trustworthy. What do you have to change to become a more trustworthy partner in this relationship? How about martyrs? Why are martyrs not trustworthy? They are afraid of what? Of good times. Martyrs have a very definite limit at how good and how happy things can be. So when the relationship starts getting too happy, what is a martyr going to do? Going to wreck it. How do martyrs work or wreck things? How do they make things not so happy? Lots of ways. Is anybody here good at worry? Anybody good worrier? What does worry accomplish? Oh, it does. Worry is a very effective tool to make sure that today is not too good. Right? It works. Let's say you just won an all-expense-paid trip to Hawaii. Okay? All expense paid, going to stay in a wonderful hotel right on the ocean. Just going to be absolutely marvelous. Now, if a martyr ever won that trip, would they be able to go and enjoy it? Oh, heck no. As you perceive it, you define it. As you define it, you limit yourself. So what can a good worrier do to make sure that even that isn't too good? What can a worrier worry about to wreck it? It might rain. I'm sure it's going to rain every day. What else can you worry about? Plain old wreck. Get sunburn. And if you're a good worrier, you don't just get sunburn, you get skin cancer. Right? How about tornadoes, hurricanes? Don't even have tornadoes, but I can worry about it. See, it works. Martyrs aren't safe to be in relationships with. They're going to wreck it for you. How about a perfectionist? Are they trustworthy in a relationship?
Never good enough.
Never good enough. Not only do they have to be perfect, what else has to be perfect? You and everything else. The house has to be perfectly clean. God knows what. It has to be perfect or it isn't good enough. What do you have to change to be a more trustworthy partner in this relationship? And it takes both. Tap dancers. Are tap dancers trustworthy? No. What do tap dancers do?
Sneak behind your back.
They sneak. They dance. You can never nail them down. You never know where they're at. Whenever it gets good enough or whenever it gets a little bit too intimate, what is a tap dancer going to do? Going to shuffle. They'll wreck it every time. A tap dancer would rather end a relationship than get past a certain point of intimacy. Rather than work through it and become more intimate, a tap dancer will wreck it. Why? Because they're afraid of commitment. Self-defeating learned behaviors. What do you need to change in a relationship? It takes both. And the risk is, if you only have one person working the relationship, it can't work. And I know that's like a sword going into the heart of an awful lot of people because they desperately love the person at the other end of their tightrope, but they know they aren't working at the relationship. It is dangerous when one person gets into recovery. Imagine two pencils with bubble gum on the top. And one person starts to recover, which means to change. It means growth. The other person doesn't. Sooner or later, one of three things is going to happen. This person hopefully has a conversion experience and starts moving along, shortening the distance between the two people. That's the best. Second thing that can happen is this person tries to give up recovery and to go back to the way it was. That never works. Because once you know the difference, you can never go back. Or the third thing that can happen sooner or later, bubblegum breaks. Relationships can die. And when they die, they're dead. And there's nothing you can do about it to bring it back to life. A lot of people wind up trying to do mouth-to-mouth to a corpse. All the mouth-to-mouth to a corpse in the world doesn't work. I've had people that drag their significant other into counseling, and they know it's over. You aren't talking about relationship counseling, not when one person wants out, not when it's dead for one person, let alone both. It can't happen. Sometimes when you get into recovery, it causes significant pain. But it is pain that can get better. It is on the road to some real recovery. It takes both. It takes trust. The only way you build trust is by being trustworthy. And the name, the word for growing to be more trustworthy is called growth. That's the fourth word. Both people have to be willing to grow, have to be willing to deal with those self-defeating learned behaviors that get in the way, which is what stage 2 recovery is all about in the first place. Fifth word is program. The only way we change and grow is by working a program, a specific, intelligent, focused program, which is what the next program is about. But as you work a program, you grow. As we grow, we learn to be more trustworthy. As our trustworthiness grows, trust increases. And we have both people who are being honest and playing fair. I'd like to wrap all of this together in, I think, a very simple and beautiful, beautiful story, a parable, if you will. And it's the difference between heaven and hell. And the story is told that there were people who were starving to death. And they were all invited into the banquet room. And in the banquet room was a table loaded with every wonderful good thing you could possibly eat. The catch was everybody only had one utensil to use, and it was a very long spoon. The spoon was so long you couldn't get it in your own mouth. The people in hell weren't the people who had a different hunger or a different access to the food. They were people who were so busy trying to feed themselves, they starved to death. And people in heaven were those that fed you, trusting what? That you feed me. The difference between heaven and hell are both people willing to feed each other so that neither one has to starve to death. What do you bring to the party? And the first question is, me. If long enough you don't bring presents to the party, pretty soon the party ends. And it can die beyond the ability to ever give it life again. Work a program, become trustworthy, build the trust. That's what recovery is all about. Thank you.
For a complete catalog of books, audio cassettes, and videotapes by Ernie Larson, please contact E. Larson Enterprises, 7549 Douglas Drive North, Minneapolis, Minnesota 55443, or call 612-560-4197.